Hello and welcome back to the Sanderlanche podcast. I'm Jamie and with me is
Jack,
Data,
and Joe.
And this week we are covering Mistborn Book 1, The Final Empire, chapters 14 to 17. In these chapters we finally get an up-close look at Kredik Shaw and the troubles that are waiting for Kelsier and Vin. We almost lose Vin in a terrifying encounter with the Steel Inquisitors. Sazed finds and translates what appears to be the Lord Ruler's diary from pre-Ascension times. Vin is bored while healing from her injuries. And we learn a little bit about the powers of the Keepers and the Lord Ruler himself. There's a lot to unpack here, so hold on to something. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
My revolution carries me in a moment lost in time. My revolution sets me free. I will flow across the lines. Bring up the brother in me. I'm searching for you.
Okay, guys, and this was a lot. This is more chapters than we've read before. So I don't know if it felt longer to you guys than it actually was, since they're shorter chapters. But what did you guys think overall of these 4 chapters?
Well, we jumped into things pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready for a battle with the Inquisitors straight up. That was sort of surprising and shocking. And then there wasn't really a lot of stuff that happened in the next 3 chapters, but we got lots of little bits of information which were really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's. I don't think anyone imagined, as we kind of said last week, that everything was going to go great for Vin and Kelsier once they got in there, but it went really bad really fast.
Also, these Inquisitors are just terrifying.
It went bad in a way I wasn't expecting.
What were you expecting?
I don't know what I was expecting, but Inquisitors was not that. Like when the first one stepped out of the chamber, I'm just like, oh shit.
Yeah, and 1 is bad, and then you turn around and there's 2 more.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was just unexpected, and then the fact that they made it out at all. I mean, yeah, I figured they probably would, but I'm just like, I don't know quite what's going to happen here. I'm really surprised that Kelsier made it out, but we didn't find out how in the chapters following. I thought, that's a little strange. I feel like that's not good. But then there's also the fact that Sazed apparently took out an Inquisitor, although he says he didn't. So I'm like, okay, what actually happened? I want to know more about these Inquisitors, damn it.
I think we'll learn.
Well, yeah, but I want it now. I want to read further ahead, damn it.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think my favorite part about these chapters, I agree with Jamie, it's like we get all these little bits of information that just kind of make you think, ooh, that kind of gives credence to my theory, or, oh, I need to know more about Terracemen. Like, it's just, these chapters really just piqued my interest into the characters and their backgrounds even more. So it was good reading.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I said last week that a lot kind of happens in these chapters. There's not a lot event-wise. Like, there's the big fight, and then it's kind of nothing like big happens, but there's lots of stuff. And like you said, there's lots of little bits here and there.
We jump from part 2 to part 3.
Mm-hmm. And when we get to actually that moment, there's something I want to read. But let's I guess start at the beginning. And this one starts with what I feel is kind of one of the strangest of the epigraphs we've had yet, where he's like, sometimes I wonder if I'm going crazy. And you know, I've done all this stuff. All the friends I've lost, the friends I've been forced to kill.
That line stuck out at me a bit. I'm just like, oh, okay, this is something we haven't really covered a lot.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's path to power has bodies littered across it, and bodies that, like, of people he liked. Yeah, this is painting a really dark picture.
The funny thing is, when you say that, what it reminds me of is there's a line in the Dresden Files book, Changes, where Harry's just like, Martin, I have literally killed people I like better than you.
Finally up to Changes.
And then we get to the part where he's just like, I see shadows following me, dark creatures I don't understand nor wish to understand. Are they perhaps some figment of my overtaxed mind? So it's almost like we're reading the journal of a guy who is slowly going insane here.
Unless, he's turned around and those are just mist wraiths coming up behind him. He's like, fuck's that. Oh, God.
It's true. Whatever it is could actually be real. So we move into the chapter, and they're picking up Kelsier's bag and kind of heading towards Kredik Shaw, and it starts to rain, which Vin feels like is a mixed blessing here. And they're going for this room, and Vin's like, what's inside the room? And Kelsier's like, I don't know. The Lord Ruler goes there for 3 hours, once every 3 days, and then leaves. And we have no idea what he does or why he goes in there. And we find out that that's what Kelsier was doing when he got captured and sent to the pits, was they were trying to break into this room because they assumed that the Lord Ruler must have something really awesome in there if he spends 3 hours every 3 days in there.
This is where he keeps the hot tub.
Ooh, or a Lazarus pit.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And this is the part of the chapter, this is the part of the story so far that kind of irks me. It's like he's literally going to the place he was caught before and thinking, yeah, I'll just be able to waltz right in here. It's no big deal. It might be dangerous, but I'm Kelsier. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I disagree. I thought it was very fitting with his character. It's like he spent a whole bit of time admonishing Vin for her arrogance and just like, you got these powers and now you think you know so much better and you can do these things you can't do. And that is exactly what he does here. He's like, well, I got caught last time, but I wasn't a Mistborn then, or I didn't have the powers of a Mistborn. So maybe if I go in now with those powers, I'm totally set because I'm a Mistborn now.
He also made the point that he didn't actually plan it this time, so no one could have betrayed him because no one knew what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. So he thought maybe if no one had the heads up that he was going to be there, he'd be safer, which obviously didn't work.
Right. Yeah, and it's almost like he's prying into this, like, somebody betrayed me last time, who we find out in these chapters that the Jamie and Dax competing theory, that they were both trying to get out first, that it was his wife that did it. That's what at least people think. And so it's almost like we got in with this big plan that last time, and we only failed because she betrayed me, or somebody betrayed me, and we think it was her. Maybe if I can go this time, it will prove that right one way or the other, that if she really did betray me or not. That's how I've always felt about it, at least. I don't know if that's in the text or if that's just what I'm imposing on there.
Well, that's it. If now he's gone and he hasn't told anyone this plan and they've still been caught, maybe that gives him some peace of mind that she didn't really betray him.
And he says he didn't tell anybody, but then when Sazed shows up with Vin, or when Vin talks to Sazed later, I don't remember exactly when it comes in, he's like, oh yeah, Kelsier told me what he was going to do, so I knew where to go when I discovered you missing. And so it's like, wait a second, so did he tell somebody or did he not tell somebody?
True.
But you gotta admit, it's pretty tantalizing. Like, what is in this secret room that the Lord Ruler visits all the time? How do you even know that he visits this room? Like, do you have spies inside the... That part gets me.
Also, like, that was information from the initial plan 3 years ago. Is it still the case, or has the Lord Ruler moved that room to somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. And I also like when they're talking about it, and he's like, maybe the room holds the secret to his immortality and so on. And she's like, but why do you need to worry about that? You have the 11th metal, right? And he totally glosses over that. He's like, I failed to get in last time, Vin. We got close, but there were Inquisitors waiting for us. Which, hey, guess what happens again?
Yeah, maybe that's where they like sleep or something.
So he just that's the 3 hours. That's the 3 hours that the Lord Ruler goes and hangs out with the Inquisitors and parties with them.
Yeah, that's their house. That's where they chill.
This is the Inquisitor's bunkhouse.
Yeah.
And I like the line where he's like, I guess I've been hanging out with Breeze too long. I just don't feel right unless someone tells me I'm crazy. And then we also find out Vin starts feeling something. He's like, oh yeah, the Lord Ruler is like a super powerful soother and just smothers everybody's emotions when you get close. You got to turn on your copper. Which that's just thrown in there, but that's kind of...
I mean, that makes sense.
Personal. Yeah, I mean, we know he's a powerful elementor, right? So you're right. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's like something... He's apparently just constantly radiating this soothing, like chilling everyone out around him.
Also, like, what kind of a supply of metal does he have? Does he just have, like, an IV drip full of the metals just attached to his arm? He's permanently walking around with it? Because, like, He's got to be burning through that shit really quickly.
That's a great visual. He's actually like hooked up to IVs all the time. He walks around with like one of those, one of those things on wheels that drips IV.
But also they talk about like flaring your metals for too long as well, and that has an effect on the body. What the hell is this effect on him?
So he's
By
being
radiating
constantly wheeled
this.
around in a hospital gurney with the IV drip.
I was thinking maybe he was going more and more insane, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the warning from Kelsier early on about like what flaring your metals a lot, like that can mess you up, but we haven't really seen any example of that, and what exactly that could mean. We've kind of gotten hints, so
Yet.
who knows? Yeah, you got to feel like it's going to come up at some point, right? They're not going to drop something like that into the text and be like, we'll never bother showing that.
No, God, no. I think at some point, I feel like initially my thought was at some point they're going to like go to, I don't know, maybe a hospital or something, and Kelsey's going to point and just go, yeah, that guy, too much copper, and he's like, yeah, just curled up in a ball, his skin's gone all yellow or something. But I don't know, maybe you get the feeling like it'll happen to someone in the middle of battle now. Like you'll see it, someone get too desperate, burn too much, and then they'll just go down in a heap. I don't know, I'm grasping at straws.
Got to keep our eyes out for what exactly that means. Well, Vin notes that, the Lord Ruler's palace has no sort of wall or anything around it, and then she's like, well, of course not. Who's going to attack the Lord Ruler? And they get very descriptive of Kredik Shaw, which we haven't had described real well before. There's no trees or anything around it. There's just like a collection of wings, towers, and spires, and
You said it was on one of the coins, yeah?
yeah. So we've seen it, I guess. That's a good point. They just never described it before.
Yeah.
And then Kelsier just straight up murders a couple dudes standing guard outside.
As he does.
As he does, exactly. And then they move inside into like a room where the guards are sitting down eating or something, and he grabs a metal candelabrum and just begins to spin with it, striking down soldier after soldier, is the way it's described. I don't know how to picture that, if he's just like holding it and spinning and smacking people like a top, or if he's kind of doing what he was doing in that earlier fight where he's kind of like turning and pushing and pulling a thing back and forth and killing people with it. They don't bother to kind of get into the details of it. He just kills a bunch of dudes.
I sort of pictured it as like that scene at the start of Thor Ragnarok where Thor just throws the hammer and the camera follows the hammer as it goes around in a circle and takes out everyone in a radius around him.
Ooh.
Plus, it gives you an excuse to imagine Led Zeppelin in the middle of...
Yeah, exactly. I hope
See,
they have
now
Led Zeppelin if the movie comes out.
Yeah, I was about to say, now you got me thinking of like how they're gonna score this movie when it gets made. And then Vin kills people for what I guess is like her first time ever, and she doesn't even think about it. She just like starts shooting coins at people and only thinks after the fact, like, I just killed 4 people.
Yes, when the adrenaline quickly dies off.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't gloss over that because, like, she's always had to do immoral things to survive being a part of a thieving crew, but it's like she's still very innocent in terms of how nasty the world can really be in some ways. So I'm glad they did bring this up, but also just like I just did this. Holy shit, there's more coming. I got to keep going. So I thought that was a nice touch.
Mm. Well, and she even says before Reen had always done the killing, so it's not like they've never been killing people in jobs she's involved in. It's just like she never personally.
Yeah.
And now that his name has come up, I'm just curious. What do you guys think we're going to see, if anything, from Reen in the future? Because we hear about him a whole lot, but all we know about him is that he disappeared and betrayed her, she says, and left her to like cover his debts, basically.
I get the feeling he's going to show up as some character under another name, and it's not going to be revealed for a long time who. Like that character is really Reen. I don't know if that's someone we've already met or someone we haven't yet met, but I feel like that's how he's going to come back into the story.
I guess it would have to be somebody that Vin hasn't met either, because assume she would recognize her brother. But that's interesting, yeah.
Well, potentially. I mean, who knows? Like maybe I don't know. I'm going to go with another crackpot theory here. Maybe he's an Inquisitor and she doesn't recognize him with spikes in his face.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We still don't know how they're created, so...
Right.
Ooh, what if he'll come back like winning the lotto style when he finds out Vin's all tough and powerful? He'll be like, hey, want to help me out?
I feel like that's what you'd expect, right? Like, she finally gets something good going for herself, and then the guy who always used to beat her up and take advantage of her or whatever shows up. He's like, "Oh, hey, sis."
We're family.
Mind if I blackmail you a little bit, eh?
They'll run into each other at one of these balls and have a reunion with their obligator father.
Oh, that would be
Ooh.
awkward.
So awkward.
What does Vin do if she's playing a character and she runs into her brother also playing a different character?
She's just like, be cool, man. Be cool.
It's like, yes, we are meeting now for the first time.
Yeah. They walk away. They walk
Notice
away
that
like
meme?
a couple of gunslingers, like, just don't make any sudden movements.
It's like that meme of the monkey doll with the eyes going back and forth. Uh-oh.
Yep, it's exactly. I can totally picture what you're talking about. Okay. I'm sorry, I stopped us in the middle of a big action scene to talk about something that may or may not ever happen. But so
Well,
yeah,
you've brought it up, so I'm going to assume that it probably does.
we'll see.
Awkward silence.
What were you saying about that monkey doll?
Nah, he's gonna cut the awkward. Yeah. He's gonna cut the awkward silence out. That way it appears absolutely normal.
Are you kidding? The awkward is the funniest part. Why would you cut that out? Let's see. So Kelsier kills a bunch of dudes. There's daggers. There's metal flying around. Vin is holding like a handful of bloody coins because she killed a guy with coins and then pulled the coins back so she could kill more dudes with them, which that's badass. I don't know. It's just, I'm going to kill you with these coins that are still dripping with the blood of the last person I killed with them.
Which, again, to remind me of a comic book movie, like the scene in X-Men First Class where Magneto pulls the knife out of the dude's hand, throws it into the other guy, rips it back out of the other guy and back into the hand. Anyone?
Yep. Nazi Hunter Magneto. I remember.
Yep.
Best part of that movie.
Absolutely.
Everyone was like, we just need the spin-off of Nazi hunting Magneto. Like, everyone wants to watch that movie.
I would watch the shit out of that movie.
That would have been like, instead of like Old Man Logan in the Logan movie, that's what you want. That's like the first rated R X-Men movie is Nazi hunting Magneto.
Oh,
Can that be the title too? Magneto, Nazi Hunter.
Exactly.
Ball.
it's like, guys, why is the James Bond theme playing over the title credits? Because it's awesome.
Take this, Nazis. Give me your Nazi gold.
See, well, that's more like Indiana Jones than James Bond.
Yeah, but I don't know. Fassbender always comes across as a James Bond. I've sidetracked us again. I keep doing that.
Well, so Kelsier has, and this is another one of those moments where it's like super cold, where he's like, every Ska knows in his heart that it is the greatest of crimes to take up arms in defense of the final empire. So basically, it's okay to slaughter these people indiscriminately because they work for him and we hate the Lord Ruler. So
Yeah, we're getting a really
Don't be
nasty
concerned.
side of Kelsier here.
Yeah, let's not give any thought philosophically to these people have families and lives of their own, and they're probably just doing this work because it's the only work they can get. Let's just say they're all bad. Let's kill them.
Yeah, I'm
They
really.
all made a choice.
yeah, he's it's these moments like this and the nobility where it's just like he goes to this dark place sometimes.
Really does. It's very concerning.
And so they get in there, and Vin notes on the way that like there's no metal on any of these guards. They've all been trained to fight Allomancers. They're all haze killers, basically. And they find a really nice room with a domed roof and murals all over the place. And she says it's like the other mural or the stained windows and stuff she's seen, where it's like these representations of the Lord Ruler, but this is less abstract. There's a big mountain, there's a cavern, and a pool of light, and something very dark, and that's an entire sentence by itself. So it's just teasing at these little hints about what happened 1,000 years ago with the deepness and such. Once again, they're dabbing little things here and there.
Yeah. The very gothic sort of image this is painting. Like,
Yeah.
well, the dark stone and the everything else. When the door opens, the Inquisitor's in there. Like, my mind just instantly put in the lightning bolt past the windows.
Bum bum bum.
Dramatic thunderclap.
Yep. Well, and it is raining
Yeah, like
outside, so
Get the gargoyles coming down to do some work.
so does that make their Lord Ruler like Xanatos?
Sure.
He can be played by Jonathan Frakes. It'll be great.
I'll take that.
Jonathan Frakes is really old now, though. So.
So's Lord Ruler.
He's still got the voice.
That's true.
Like, Lord Ruler's 1,000 years old. If anything, Jonathan Frakes is young.
That's an excellent point. Although we've never seen Lord Ruler, so we don't know what he looks like. He may look 1,000. We don't know. So there's a Steel Inquisitor inside when he opens the door of this. There's a little building inside the building that I guess we should touch on that. Ornate and carved stone and flowing patterns. A small building, a single story. And Kelsier's like, I'm going to make it into this room, finally. Open the door, Steel Inquisitor, who immediately reaches out and grabs Kelsier by the throat as he's screaming for Vin to run. Did anyone think that Kelsier might actually die here?
The thought crossed my mind.
I certainly thought he would come out of the situation more injured than Vin, which did not happen.
No. Okay. Vin run. She froze, and then from the sides come two more black-robed Inquisitors. Tall, lean, and bald, marked with spikes and intricate ministry eye tattoos. So, I don't remember if we've established before they have the same eye tattoos that we've seen on the Obligators. But they at least have very similar markings.
Around the spikes?
Apparently around the spikes, yeah.
Weird.
Which, yeah, you gotta try to picture, like, I always pictured, like, really giant circles on their eyes, basically. Like, the spikes had really big end points.
Yeah, that's what I pictured, yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean, they might be more like railroad spikes, where the end is not really much bigger than any other part of it. But, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, they're somewhat long because they go all the way through the back of the head and out the back, but
yeah,
how
well,
big they are at the end, who knows?
Like, to go back to the question of how the hell are these things created? Like, did the tattoos come with the spikes or before the spikes? Are these obligators who graduated to spike face?
Graduated to spike. I like that. It's like Pomp and Circumstances playing, and you have a little hat with a tassel on it.
And then
now
they
we
shove
drive
the
the spikes
spikes through their eyes. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, why did I become valedictorian?
You just hear like kink, kink, and screams like ah. Okay.
And next, oh god. So the Inquisitor knows Kelsier. He says he knows of him. He's like, Kelsier, the survivor of Hathsin. And then immediately turns to Vin and is like, and you, I've been looking for you. I will let this one die quickly if you tell me which nobleman spawned you, half-breed. So this may be the guy who's been following Vin, it seems like. He has a stake in that.
Is that a pun?
It was not intentionally, but yeah, okay, I got it. Well, and the interesting thing is, this is also the one that shows up, like, Vin gets chased by one Inquisitor, and this is the second one that shows up to chase her down. So you almost get the impression that this guy has it out for her.
Yeah, he keeps asking, like, who's your dad?
Who's your daddy?
Who is it? I gotta know. I gotta write it down in my diary.
But I like that Kelsier plays the guy completely by whispering something, and the Inquisitor pulls him closer to hear what he's saying and gets a dagger in his neck as a reward for that, and then gets his arm broken. And then Kelsier's like, I said run. Have you not been listening, girl? And throws his coin pouch at her to push her down the hall and away, because I guess this is kind of like one of those fight or flight situations, and Vin has frozen. Like, holy shit, there's 3 Inquisitors here. What do I do? Which I don't blame her for.
She was not trained for this.
No. I don't think anyone is trained for this. Maybe Kelsier. We don't know what his training was like.
Well, they say people live in fear of these things, and there are only 20 of them. So most people who like wind up on the receiving end of them probably face one at a time. And there you got 3 of the bastards.
That's a good point. What percentage of the Inquisitors is here? It's 3 of 20?
Yeah, Kelsier said earlier that about half of them were in Luthadel at any given time. So somewhere around the city, theoretically, there's like 10 of them hanging around. And so fully a third of the ones in the city are in this room for whatever reason. I mean, what do you guys...
Is this a bunkhouse?
Yeah.
They were just having a nice meal.
It could be. That guy just had a shower or whatever and was coming out.
Yeah, he was having a kip, and he's like, "Oh, hey, look who came to call. Hello."
So
Yeah, it's like
Smiled.
he
He was excited.
it's like he was doing a thing where he's about to open the door from the inside when someone else opened it on the outside, and he thought, I'm going to cover this and make it look like I planned this. Hey guys!
How's it happen?
So I mean, what does everybody think? Were they waiting here for them? Is this a coincidence that this is just where Inquisitors hang out and they ran into him, or what's the deal?
I feel
My
like
thoughts are. Go ahead, Jack.
No, you go first. I always seem to go first.
Okay. My thought was that. Sorry, now I lost my thought. Hold on.
That's why Jack goes first, because he remembers things.
Yeah, exactly.
My bad.
No, you're fine. My thought was that the Inquisitors knew. They've been hearing around town that the survivor of Hathsin has returned, and maybe they've just been doing patrols there because they knew he tried to break in before. So that was my thought on it.
Yeah, I think given the fact they haven't exactly been subtle about the fact Kelsier is back. I mean, especially considering the entire Vin's previous crew knew he was back, and then that crew was found tortured and murdered by an Inquisitor. So clearly they've gotten the information that he is back. That said, I think there is something more to the fact that they seem to be waiting for them on this particular night. Like they knew he was coming back somehow, but I don't quite know how yet.
Okay.
It definitely sounds like a trap.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was to open that door and there's one like eerily smiling at them. Like they were waiting for them. It definitely wasn't.
Yeah, and then as soon as that happens, the other two pop out of the sides. It's like, hey guys.
Yeah. And then Admiral Akbar pops up and goes, "It's a trap."
Okay. I was just curious where y'all were falling in that. It sounds like everyone's kind of thinking along the same lines. Vin's running through the corridors, sometimes flying through the corridors, trying to find a way out of this place that she has no familiarity with. And that, honestly, that may have been the biggest mistake in bringing Vin, was that apparently Kelsier has studied the plans for this place in depth, and that's the only explanation we get later on for why he got out without too much of a problem and wasn't horribly injured in the process. That and the fact that they seem more interested in Vin than him. But Vin has no idea where she is or what is going on in this weird, freaky building. So, I mean, with her luck, she might have stumbled into the Lord Ruler's bedroom or something, just running around.
Man, what's this room with all these IV drips?
And she finds a freaky room with a big gold altar and some candelabra and religious paraphernalia, whatever that means, and tries to hide out in there when the Inquisitor shows up, and she has to burn her adium to avoid him. But unfortunately, it turns out that he also has some adium.
Which I think when the Inquisitors first showed up, I was wondering, it's like, are they Mistings or Mistborn? And if like they can use adium in like as well as what was the other one they used to like sense the like, because they were like Kelsier flared a metal and the Inquisitor locked onto him in that initial encounter, so they can burn more than one metal. That would suggest they're Mistborns, yeah.
Yeah, as far as we know, and you're right. It's I think it's brass. Now I gotta look it up, but we know from the first time when they're talking about Inquisitors that they are all seekers, like Marsh, and that they can detect allomancy, so they can all burn. I'm having to look at it just to make sure. No, I was wrong. Is bronze.
Are we sure that this isn't Harry Potter? They got keepers and seekers in this.
Well, if we see, a bludger, then we can talk. But yeah, so we know, according to Kelsier at least, they can all burn bronze to find allomancers, hunt them down. That's one of their jobs. And now we see this guy burning adium as well, which, if they're regular old allomancers, based on what we know, you either get one or you get all of them, which would mean that this guy at least, well, and the second guy, because when he shows up, he's also burning adium. These two at least are definitely Mistborn, based, if normal allomancy rules apply, which we don't know for sure that they do, because they somehow survive spikes through their brains and stuff. So,
Right.
We still don't know what those spikes are made of, do we?
I don't think we do.
The 11th metal. No, I don't know.
Could be. For all we know. And he's using iron here to pull against her, and he pushes back coins that she shot at him. So yeah, he can use several metals.
Right.
And she finds like a big book thing because it doesn't have any metal on it, so he won't detect it, and uses it to block the spiky things that apparently she says that they're just like sitting in a bowl on a pillar, like a little handful of metal triangles that are sharp on all sides. So basically, there's like ninja stars or something sitting in this room with an altar, just in a big old bowl, and he pulls them out and like starts chucking them.
The way that they're described, it made me think they were like caltrops or something.
Caltrops, yeah.
Something
spiky.
So this is a weird room of religious significance. Like there's an altar and religious paraphernalia and a bowl of spikes.
Yeah. Maybe those were the sacred spikes the Lord Ruler used to vanquish the deep.
It's like
the holy caltrops of Antioch.
Yeah, exactly. He figured out if you threw caltrops on the ground, the deepness would step on them, and its tentacles would get all spiked up. And
my one weakness,
Brother
Lego
Maynard.
bricks.
Brother Maynard, can you bring the caltrops of Antioch?
Re shall be the counting. And so she escapes this guy, and here's the moment that I like when she's burning the adium, and we get the first look at it kind of in a serious fight, where there's like a dozen shoulders that show up, and they're all swinging like staves and things at her. And this was Dak's thing, where last time we found out what adium does, he's like, well, if you have like a whole army coming at you, then how's it really going to help? But these guys, like, she's just dodging everything. The 12 different guys are swinging at her in an enclosed space.
Yep. As I'm sure many listeners wanted, I have to shut my mouth on that one.
And she feels invincible. Right up until she turns the corner, and the other guy's standing there with shadows of his own jumping out and stabs her with something sharp.
I thought it was interesting, like, because we had this conversation last week, I think, where we were talking about the glass daggers, and then this one's specifically called obsidian, when last time we assumed that's what the glass meant.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, we totally talked about that. We're like, yeah, I assumed that it was like volcanic glass, but they do make that differentiation here. So it makes you wonder, what exactly kind of weapon is Vin using?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I like this guy apparently has like a spear or something. He says it's a length of wood affixed with sharp obsidian blades.
Jesus.
So these guys are hardcore. But he didn't want to kill her because he wants to know who her father is. Again, who's your daddy? And it's...
Well, I mean, it makes sense if, like, they are the shock troops designed... Like, they are specifically there to put down Mistborns and make sure no half-breeds come about.
Mm-hmm.
They're still on the clock here.
I'm just trying to do my job.
They're really especially keen into who Vin's father is. Like, they didn't stop and ask Kelsier who his father is. Do they already know? Have they already killed his father? You know, like, what is their end game of knowing this? Because I know, like, that's their role. You know, they've got to stop half-breeds and things like that. But they're really obsessed with who Vin's father is. It's like they just didn't know she existed at all. And then all of a sudden, boom, she's there. And she's a real threat, obviously.
Mm.
Actually, on that note, like, they didn't seem interested in Kelsier at all if they've already killed his father. What the hell do they think of Marsh? Are they aware of his existence? Because we know he's not a Mistborn, but maybe they don't know that, and they know Kelsier is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would they also be hunting down Marsh?
I guess that's a really interesting point, is... Do people in general, I mean, we know that the Underground, or their friends at least, know that they're brothers. And they were raised together as noblemen. So, yeah, I mean, you know, did their father get executed for siring half-breeds? Do they know all of who, you know, was his kids were? Because you would think if they were raised as noblemen, they were public knowledge, basically. So if you later found out that the truth, then maybe, I guess it could have just be that, like, Kelsier's dad is the only one who found out what their mom was and killed him for it, and then kept it quiet because he did not want to be executed.
Yeah, I don't know. It just comes off as like, like you could make the argument that, oh well, Marsh isn't a Mistborn. He's only so it's not really that much of a threat. I'm like, that really does not gel with the impression we've gotten of this governing system. Like, any half-breeds at all, regardless of what they actually are, get killed. So
they are not supposed to exist. They have to die. I agree. That's the way it's definitely seemed up till now. Interesting. I mean, they may think that Kelsier is a noble, in which case, they still want to kill him because he's a criminal. But
okay, that's a fair point.
The same thing. We really just don't know, I guess. So she hears the rain with her tin and is like, I'm going to get out. And now there's an ice cream truck driving past outside, making ice cream truck music.
Dude, it's ruining the mood.
Yeah, that's not the correct background music for this moment. Might have to give it a minute here.
Is that what she heard in the rain? Some ice cream truck?
Yeah, she's like, oh, I want ice cream. Sweet.
I gotta get out of here to get some ice cream. Maybe that'll cool off my wound.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, she starts running or leaving, basically, and the Inquisitor, in an amused voice, is like, you think to escape? So he doesn't seem all that threatened by her. Maybe it's just the fact that he's already given her a good stabbing, but he's not worried about her, really.
I mean, would you be? You got spikes in your eyes. You're badass.
It sounds like people don't usually get away from an Inquisitor either. They just have a bit of fun with them and then they'll kill them.
Which I think is the scary part. Like, up until now, we just thought the Inquisitors were just brutal monsters, and turns out no, they're actually sadists too. They're enjoying this, the bastards.
Totally is. And then out into the night, where she tries to get away from him by kind of hiding in the dark and getting rid of her metal, so he chases that instead, and then kind of ducking down and hiding somewhere and burning her copper so she can't be detected. Except he finds her. And she's kind of shocked. She's like, no, there's no way. How could he possibly have found me? Any theories about that?
They have powers we aren't aware of.
Yeah, I mean, that would seem to be the default at this point. It's like, they can do some weird shit that nobody understands.
The spikes give them, some kind of super senses, They
Sonic abilities.
Yeah, they're like Daredevil. With spikes in their eyes.
The spikes are actually super binoculars, so they can see through everything.
They're prisms. They can see every color at once.
They can smell her perfume.
She was concerned earlier about those scents in her bath. Maybe it came back to bite her. And then, just as he's about to grab her, and she's kind of passing out, a sound like shattering branches and warm arms pick her up, and she says Kelsier, but it was not Kelsier. What did you guys think at that point? Who did you think had shown up here?
I don't know why. Maybe it's because she thought it was Kelsier, and she said it was another familiar face. But in my brain, I thought it was Marsh. I'm not sure why, but that's just where my brain went.
No, I kind of see the logical leap there.
I sort of thought it would have been someone from the crew, but I didn't really pay it too much thought. And then we got the answer pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the same. I was like, well, it's one of her allies, but I've got no idea which.
Okay. And that is the end of the chapter. And we move on to the next epigraph. Is also brings in a new character, a new terraceman, to talk about a little bit. That he's like, I don't know why Quan betrayed me. He was the one who discovered me as the hero of ages, and now he's the only one who preaches against my reign.
So clearly you done pissed someone off, narrator.
Right. Something weird happened there with his buddy Quan.
Yeah. Quan was the Obi-Wan to his Anakin.
I feel like the epigraphs in these 4 chapters we read are really giving us a lot of insight into this guy and what's going on with him, maybe more so than we've gotten up till this point.
Yeah.
I think we're also starting to see things in the chapters themselves that are aligning with these epigraphs. So it's sort of at the start it was kind of like two separate stories. We're not really sure how it's going to marry up, but then now we're starting to go, oh, I think I see what's unfolding here. So yeah, poor Quan, he thought he had it right. Obviously something happened, he realized he was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh no, watching this guy kill all his friends in the name of power makes me think I was wrong.
Yeah, but at the same time, like from the other stuff that we've read from this guy's perspective, you don't feel like he's a guy like killing people willy-nilly for power. Like that's not the impression that I get, at least in what we've read so far. He seems like not a horrible guy.
No, and I'm not saying that he is, but it's like the fact that he is talking about friends that he's had to kill clearly means that he has made some poor decisions or something, or he's made like hard decisions for the right reasons, or however you want to play it, and like that's got to be just people watching that from the outside, probably going to think, I can't believe you actually did that. But there's his intentions versus what other people see. So,
right. Yeah. You never know what a person's thinking. You just see what's going on the outside. So.
Yeah, and it's like, yes, this narrator is really upset by all the horrible things he's had to do, but from the outside, Quan might just see a guy who's done these horrible things and none of the turmoil inside. Mm-hmm. And so he thinks that maybe he's enjoying it or something.
Somewhat similar to how we react to Kelsier and his emotions about killing people. He sees he's got to do a job. You know, we're like, oh, it's so cold and heartless and things. And, you know, he doesn't seem to be sort of upset by it, but he seems to have to justify it to people every time.
Yeah.
So I think we'll start to see some qualities, I think.
Interesting parallel. I like that. So we move into chapter 15, and it's Doxson just berating Kelsier, like, what is wrong with you? How could you have taken her there?
My immediate thought is, Kelsier's here. How the hell did he get away? And I spent the entire chapter waiting for that explanation, and I'm not sure it actually came. Did it?
No.
We got, in I think maybe the next chapter, like a very sort of throwaway explanation, but we do not get details on what exactly happened with Kelsier.
The basic explanation sounds like the two Inquisitors were more interested in her, so he was only left facing one, and he just knew the grounds better, so he somehow escaped. That's like the only explanation we really got.
Well, and we know from at least the first section of the book that dodging an Inquisitor is something that he can pull off. He's done it before. So I don't know. I agree that it's odd that he manages to escape mostly unscathed. But he's getting chewed out in this chapter, and he's like, there were 3 Inquisitors waiting for us, and Dockson's like, you just left her there? He's like, well, no, she got out first. And they go back and forth, and eventually, you know, he's feeling like crap, which he kind of deserves. Like, I agree with Doxson for the most part. Like, on the one hand, Doxson is right. He's like, how could you be that stupid? You're the adult in this situation. And on the other hand, he makes some good points that it's like, it's hard to stop her from doing what she's going to do.
Yeah, both sides have a point.
And so he's going to go back to the palace looking for her, which is probably a horrible idea, but what else can he do, really? And then Lestibornis comes running down the stairs and said, someone's coming. Someone's coming. That part we understand. Out the night with the calling is a little less clear. But it's a big man with a robe. That part we get, at least. Big man, period. Robe, period. Okay, I can follow that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for talking in short bursts of sentences so I don't have a stroke reading your dialogue.
And so they're all like, this is it. The Inquisitors are coming to kill us. Let's get ready. Doxson has a pair of daggers hidden somewhere on his person, and they're ready for a fight. But Sazed shows up, and he's carrying her, and they give her some pewter so that she can keep alive, basically. And apparently Sazed is a surgeon in addition to his other talents.
I couldn't tell you why, but that did not surprise me at all.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the part where I started to get confused, because they start throwing around terms, and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about because they haven't explained this yet. He starts talking about I used up like my metal head or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. What's a metal head? Sounds like a sex toy. I don't know what's happening. I'm very confused.
So I think if I'm not mistaken here, the first taste we get of what you're talking about is when Kelsier is he's thinking to himself that Sazed is no ordinary healer. Religious rites were not the only things that the keepers stored in their uncanny memories. Their metal minds contained vast wealths of information on culture, philosophy, and science. So, metal mind.
That's right.
Metal
mind, not metal head. Excuse me.
Metalhead is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character, for one thing. Okay, so
No, that was Leatherhead.
Great.
No, there's also a Leatherhead.
No, there's Metalhead.
There's
too.
Metalhead too.
Is it?
Yeah, he's a robot turtle.
Leatherhead.
Leatherhead's an alligator.
Metalhead's the robot turtle. Leatherhead's the alligator. Yep.
I used to have all these action figures when I was a kid.
Yeah, we sure did. And play Turtles in Time on Super Nintendo. You can fight both of them.
It's true. You do that. Anyway, so less like a sex toy when it's a metal mind, I feel like. But
Metal Mind sounds like a B grade 70s supervillain.
yeah, I can see that. But yes, I think that I feel like it's intentional the way that when it was Allomancy, Brandon gives us everything up front. Like, Vin is even thinking, like, hanging a lantern on. It's like, oh, they're going to make me learn this like a little bit at a time. They're never going to tell me everything. And then they just tell us everything, more or less. We still don't know the ninth metal.
We still got drip fed a lot of it, bit by bit.
That's true. But even then, it kind of wasn't, like, hidden or anything. It was, like, just as we went through the story and it came up, here's where it talks about it, until that one scene where Kelsier's like, here, Vin, let me teach you everything. But in this case, it's almost a tease, where even later on in the next chapter, when Vin kind of confronts him about it, says, like, I don't really want to talk about that. So I feel like it's an intentional kind of, like, contrast between these things. So Sazed does a lot of surgery on her, sews up her insides, and apparently he even says pewter helps you make more blood. So apparently pewter is a very useful metal to have.
Yeah. As long as you can use it.
Especially if you're a vampire, am I right?
And then Sazed mentions metal mines again, where he says, when he found out that she was gone, I came to Luthadel as quickly as I could. I used up an entire metal mine to make the trip with haste, and I was still too late. And then he also found the book that Vin had dropped out there in the middle of the rain, and it's written in Clenny, the language of Clenium, the ancient pre-Ascension homeland of the Lord Ruler.
Which, as soon as she picked that thing up, I was like, okay, that's going to be something. It's in this religious room. She's picked it up to use, and they're going to get it back to base somehow, and it's going to be a whole thing.
She's found the Bible.
Well, kind of. I mean, we'll get into that more when Sazed tells us about it in, like, 2 chapters. But she found a book. We'll leave it at that for right now. And Kelsier admits to Doxson that he's worried that they're not going to be able to do what they're trying to do without finding a way to stop the Lord Ruler, which makes more sense when he goes on to explain that decapitation only annoys the guy, and one time he walked out of this burning inn barely more than a skeleton and healed in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, it sounds like Wolverine in Marvel's Civil War, where he walks out of that atomic blast as a skeleton and then just comes back to life somehow.
God, okay.
I think the Juggernaut did that once too.
That drove me crazy in Civil War, by the way, just because, like, up till that point, I felt like Wolverine's healing power was not supposed to be, like, I can go from a skeleton back to a person.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that good.
It wasn't.
Then it was, all of a sudden.
I feel like it was almost the comic relief moment in that comic. It's like, oh, look, he's a skeleton. Haha, he'll come back to life. Don't worry.
But so, the Lord Ruler is, this is maybe one of the first, like, specific things we've heard about how awesome his powers are, other than earlier when it was like he's a super good soother. Apparently he can heal from a skeleton back to normal in seconds. So
also, decapitation only annoys him. Is that just a head on the ground just going, guys, can you pick me up, please?
This is really annoying. Body, come here. It's like
the second part of the Caribbean movie.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And this only like
he's genuinely immortal.
Yeah. And this only like strengthens my theory that like he didn't defeat this dark deepness or whatever. It's inside him. Like it took him over, and because there's no way even with the best allomancy ever, I feel like there's no way this guy can put himself back together from a skeleton without having some kind of crazy supernatural being inside of him.
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be like their god at this point, so maybe Mega Healing comes with the territory, right?
Yeah,
just because
like,
you're
again, how did he get that power?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like how did you get the power to become god? Well, you defeat the Eldritch Abomination, and then like it sucks into you, and now you're powered by it.
I feel like knowing this almost gives more credence to earlier when Ham was like, he's God, right? So he decides what's right and wrong. Like, that's still kind of, out there. Like, we're not calling him legit God necessarily, but you can kind of understand more why they feel that way. It's not just that he has crazy allomancy powers, because lots of people have crazy allomancy powers, right? It's that this guy can do some shit that no one has ever seen before, and so maybe they legit think that he's kind of godlike. But anyway, the chapter ends with it's just Kel and Doxson talking like, was this insane stunt really worth nearly getting yourself and the child killed? And he's like, I don't know. Ask me once we know whether or not Vin will live. It's a very dramatic ending to this section. Not that I think any of us were thinking Vin was about to die.
No, but this is also where he like Kelsier starts ranting about how like he can't figure out how to make the 11th metal work, which like is really one of the few times we actually see Kelsier lose control, and his facade of being supremely calm, confident, and a bit smug really just falls away. Like he's just, I fucked up and I can't do what I need to do. Yeah,
and I really feel like Doxson is probably the only one he would let that slip with, because apparently it's like his oldest friend or whatever. He can't let the rest of the crew see him like this, but he's like, I'm legit worried that this is not going to work. Which almost makes me feel better about it, because when it's just Kelsier being like, oh yeah, everything's fine, horrible problem comes up, nah, it's fine, don't worry about it. You almost feel like he's not taking it seriously enough, and this moment kind of brings him down and humanizes him a little bit, where he's legit thinking and worried about this actually working. I like that.
And like earlier on in the chapter, before Say's brought Vin in, there's the bit where he's talking about, God, am I going to let them all die first? Mare, now Vin, are the rest going to follow? And that made me think of the epigraph. It's like all the friends that I killed. I'm like, ooh, hang on. That's a bit of a nasty parallel there. Yeah, I have thoughts about that, but we'll get to that at the end.
So the epigraph here at the beginning of part 3, Children of a Bleeding Sun.
Damn it, now the ice cream truck's at my house.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in there.
No, that's great.
I'll let you reset that up.
No, you're fine. So he doesn't
we don't live
far
that
from me,
far
so it
away.
makes sense.
Yeah, we live kind of close.
All of that is staying in. This is gold. So anyway, Children of a Bleeding Sun is a very dramatic name for the chapter, but this is one of maybe the longest of these epigraphs that we've gotten, and it's telling us this guy's history. As he's like, many people think it started in Klenium, which, hey, we just had a thing in that chapter talking about how Klenium is where the Lord Ruler lived before he ascended and became Lord Ruler.
Yeah, really laying it on thick.
Yep. So it didn't start in Klenium or Cordell, nor did it come from the great nations to the east or the fiery empire of the west. It sounds like an interesting world this guy lives in that is now gone, apparently. It began in a small, unimportant town with a youth, son of a blacksmith, unremarkable in every way, perhaps, except perhaps in his ability to get into trouble. This feels almost like the beginning of Name of the Wind to me, where he's like,
it really does.
I'm the Lord Ruler. You may have heard of me. But there's an interesting, and despite this being very interesting by itself, there's an interesting thing in the annotations that I wanted to bring up here. Because he says, and in this first book in the annotations, by the way, he calls these epigrams. And I don't know. Actually, now I want to look that up, see if that's a thing. Epigram. A pithy saying or remark, or a short poem, especially a satirical one, having a witty or ingenious ending. I think he's using the word epigram incorrectly, but that's what he calls them here. So he says the epigrams in this section of the book should look familiar, not because you've read them before, but because, assuming you have any familiarity with fantasy, you've read this kind of story before. The young peasant hero who rises up to fight the dark evil.
So this is kind of this is what happens after that chapter of that character's life.
Well, yeah, and he's going on to say, this is one of the foundational concepts of the book, however. I've read too many stories about young peasant boys who saved the world. I wanted to tell one about a world where the prophesied hero came, but failed. This concept, of course, evolved. The original idea was that the Dark Lord was going to defeat the peasant boy. Instead, however, I found the concept of the peasant boy becoming the Dark Lord more interesting.
The Dark Lord.
So
this is where Luke struck the Emperor down with all of his hatred.
I guess it kind of, yeah. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that's kind of true. If Luke had struck him down and become the new Dark Lord or whatever, although I don't want to get off on anything. I don't think Sidious ever actually was going to let himself be killed, unless
especially not
his spirit was going to move into him like he was planning with Rey.
Yeah, I was about to say, especially not if you watch the newest film. It's just like there's no way he planned to die.
I'm not talking about that movie.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get us that far off.
Let's not digress into that.
But I really like that this is the origin of the kind of the idea for this story is he's like, you've heard this story a million times. I wanted to take that and turn it on its head, where the original concept is also interesting, where he's like, this epic story about the young hero coming off the farm and becoming the prophesied hero, and then he ends up getting killed or something by the Dark Lord. That's a really interesting story. But I agree with him that it's almost more interesting to have like that kid, the hero, becoming the evil emperor.
Yeah, I would say it's like this method is probably more interesting, because if you get the hero rising up and then getting killed by the Dark Lord, and then presumably if that's the end of the story, if that is the end of the story, it's kind of just that was a bit of a waste of time. We just followed one. That would be a downer. Yeah. But it's also like that means this was entirely inconsequential. The Dark Lord is not defeated by this kid. Why are we following his story? Why aren't we following the story of the person who brought him down? Whereas the kid becoming the Dark Lord means that is the most important part of his story. So there's a reason for us to see that.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. Just in terms of story, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Christian Bale says, or not Christian Bale, Aaron Eckhart says in The Dark Knight. It's like you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain or whatever.
Yep.
So he's Harvey Dent. Interesting. Okay. I'm on board with this. No, from now on, the Lord Ruler is Harvey Dent. Okay.
I can see that. Plus, Aaron Eckhart's a great actor. So cast Aaron Eckhart as the Lord Ruler.
Yeah. I'm on board. We get into the chapter, and her first thought when she awakes in pain is that Reen had beaten her again. What had she done? And you get a list of reasons that he had beaten her before, which that's nice.
Yeah, just in case. Oh, it's been too long since we're reminded how shitty Vin's life was.
Yeah, exactly. Things are starting to seem nice. Maybe we need to remind you.
It reminds me of the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation, where Tasha Yar's constantly talking about how she was almost raped by rape gangs. I'm just like, why isn't there more to this person than their terrible, terrible past?
I think that comes up like 2 or 3 times. I feel like it's not as much as you're saying, but I agree that it does. It seems like her go-to, like, let me remind you of my character. Yeah. And Les DeBornes is there, and he says, you're awaking. Which at least that kind of makes sense. Until the next sentence where she's like, Les DeBornes. And he goes, nodding as the now. Kelsier wasn't the hit with my name. Changed it to Spook.
One day I'm going to figure out his speech.
Which, whatever the rest of it is, I'm glad his name is changed to Spook, because it's hard to say Les DeBornes. Well, I'm not even sure I'm saying that right, so.
Yeah. I'm also just imagining, it's like, for some reason it just popped into my head, like, at some point, this kid dies, and on his tombstone is just like the most incomprehensible epitaph, and all the characters are just like, he would have wanted it this way. No one can understand what the hell it says, and he's like, that's exactly how he spoke.
I mean, if at this point they were going to kill off one of the crew, I could totally see it being him.
Yeah. Fan challenge, write a tombstone for Les DeMoris.
No, Spook. His name is Spook now because it's much easier to say. She's been unconscious for 2 weeks. And Doxson comes, and she's like, hey, is Kelsier okay? And here's that explanation where he's like, he knows the palace fairly well from the plans we made 3 years ago. And he said the Inquisitors weren't very focused on killing him. They left 1 to chase him and sent 2 after you.
Which is interesting because in the previous chapter, Kelsier mentions that 2 stuck with him and 1 went after Vin.
Yep. And I think it's probably a mix based on what we saw from Vin's perspective, because 1 does chase her initially. And
then a second one shows up.
The second one shows up. And we know the second one is not a new one because it's the same one. She says it's the same one that Kelsier like stabbed in the throat and broke his arm. Feeling much better, by the way. We didn't touch on that, but he's not particularly hampered by the fact that he just had his throat slit and his arm broken. But so probably Kelsier runs and 1 chases him and the other one turns around and goes after Vin instead. But I agree, it's a little bit almost confusing the way that it's written, where we're getting conflicting reports.
No. What if the spikes? I'm following this thread of my theory. What if the spikes contain the deepness, and the deepness gives them the crazy powers?
Interesting.
So I'm gonna spike some evil god into you. Take it.
I mean, I could see that.
Interesting. Okay. Vin wants to know how the job is going. The army is growing, and Renu has begun purchasing weapons and supplies. And it turns out that her suggestion about Theron's contact was good. They're going to get Marsh into the ministry. I'm sorry. At some point, she passed out and Kelsier showed up. I kind of skipped over that. She's talking to Kelsier. And Kelsier apologizes for almost getting her killed. And he's like, you should not have been able to force me to make you go. I'm supposed to be the grown-up. I'm just not used to that. He doesn't say that. That's what he's thinking.
Yeah.
They spread a story that she's sick, but they need to get her out where people can see her because rumors are starting to circulate. And she has this very important moment for her character where we've been talking about how she's getting kind of cocky. And almost from the beginning, when she starts training, Jamie's like, I think that this is going to come back and bite her, that she's going to be too cocky at some point with these powers. And here it is. It did exactly that.
Yeah.
So long term, Jamie pulled that one out. Vin's just like, the palace, the Inquisitors, we're not invincible, are we?
I'm glad she survived it.
Yeah, right?
It's like extreme version of like the rusty nail lesson.
It really is. Now that you say that, that's totally true.
Except instead of 1 nail, it was 2, and the nails were spikes in Inquisitors' faces. It's a metaphor!
The nails were like weird Chinese throwing star caltrop thingies flying through the air at her. And we find out that apparently Spook was like at her bedside a whole lot while she was passed out, but everyone kind of took turns. And she's just like, I don't get this. Like, where I come from, if someone gets hurt, you leave them to die because you got to keep making enough money to eat. Which, as Dak likes to say, it's just some more reminders about how crappy Vin's life was. But it's also really kind of telling her how different like this crew is.
Yeah. Also, how cute that Spook has a little crush.
You're definitely getting that impression, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But almost from the beginning, honestly, like the first time they kind of met, he like was super nervous talking to her and ran away, and then spent the whole meeting trying to like not look at her, basically.
Yeah. It's like a cute little variation on the whole, boy has a precocious crush, is looking out for the girl, except it's also like hampered by the fact the boy can't speak in a normal dialect.
Yeah, it's hard to have a relationship there.
Sounds like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of like Love Actually with Colin Firth and the Portuguese girl.
2 star-crossed lovers, a girl who doesn't know how to trust, a boy who can't talk right. These 2 ever find love?
Coming to Hallmark this spring, Mixed Messages.
I like, yeah, it's a good title. Every word that Spook says is a mixed message. It's perfect. But she's having all these thoughts and remembering Reen's words, but ignoring them, and she gets back to Mansion Renu or whatever, and dude is still in character. He's really good at acting, apparently. She's just constantly impressed by, like, this guy just is always on. She mentions it a lot, which is just why I was saying that. I'm just like, it's constantly. Sorry, God.
For some reason, the image that popped into my head is like, all right, so Renault is played by Daniel Day-Lewis.
He's a method actor.
Does he ever break character? No, he doesn't.
It's like Tropic Thunder, where Robert Downey Jr.'s character never breaks character until the DVD commentary is done. She goes and talks to Sazed, and she sees him wearing spectacles, which she's like, why is he doing that? I've seen him read without glasses before. And she's just like, you're an Allomancer. And he's like, what? Why would you say something like that? And I like that he doesn't actively lie necessarily. He's kind of like going through a whole
He's dancing around it.
Like Socratic teaching method with her, where he's like, well, you say that I got to Luthadel too quickly, but there's several fast horses in the stables. I could have taken one of those. So he's acting almost as a teacher here, and instead of while trying to avoid questions at the same time.
He also points out that Kelsier told him where he was going, whereas Kelsier said he didn't tell anyone. So I'm like, does he just not count Sazed, or is there more to it than that?
Maybe he just told Sazed like right before he left, and so he didn't feel like that could possibly be long enough for anyone to have betrayed him, so he didn't really count it. But yeah,
okay, yeah, fair point.
That came up earlier that this is another conflicting bit of information where Kelsier didn't tell anyone, but Sazed like, Kelsier told me. But Kelsier obviously trusts Sazed implicitly also, though one would presume he trusted Mare implicitly, and we saw where that led. So
yeah.
But we find out that he's like, what would you think if I told you I was an Allomancer? She's like, I would think you were lying. The best liars are those who tell the truth most of the time. And he's like, oh, that's a good point, actually. And he calls her out because she's like, you couldn't have done those things without Allomancy. And he's like, you've been a Mistborn for 2 months, and you know everything in the whole world now, right? Okay, sure. And
distracted the Inquisitor.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't kill him. It would take more power than I have to kill one of those monstrosities. I simply distracted him. But he says that keepers are storehouses, and they remember things that can be used in the future, which isn't really answering her question. But he also says that he knows how many languages? Let's see. 172 languages.
172.
Yeah, that's a lot of languages.
Yeah.
Including the one that this book is written in, at least enough to translate what it says. And he mentions that most of these languages that he knows are no longer spoken because of the Lord Ruler's unity movement in the 5th century. So I guess 500 years ago, Lord Ruler's like, everyone needs to speak the same language now. If I'm going to have an empire, y'all are all going to talk the same. And Sazed explains that what he does is similar to Allomancy, but not the same. Instead of drawing power from the metals, he uses metal to create memories. And that is all he's willing to say on the matter. But we have to maintain our secrets because the Lord Ruler hunts us with a remarkable, confusing passion. Less threatening than Mistborn, but he seeks to destroy us. And here's where we find out that the Lord Ruler has breeding programs to control the Terrace population, and all Terracemen stewards are eunuchs. Which, wow. You thought Vin's life was bad. That's messed up.
Yeah, that's just horrific.
There's not many Terracemen left, and the Lord Ruler's breeders control our reproduction. Just when you thought, the Lord Ruler and the Ska that are his slaves couldn't get any worse, you get this, which is like, jeez, man. And Vin starts thinking, it's like the breeders must want them to be docile, and that's why Sazed is such like a, relaxed sort of guy. Where she accepts it really quick, and I'm just still sitting here like, breeders? What the?
Once again, they're talking about people like they're animals.
Yeah, they really are. And this almost
kind of
explains...
raises some questions about how there are more keepers as well. So more stewards and more keepers. He was born, but so he now can't reproduce. How do they still exist after all this time? How are they not just been extinct?
Right. Yeah, if it's a genetic inheritance, which I guess we don't know for sure, but if it is, like Allomancy is genetically inherited, apparently the Lord Ruler's breeders are careful to control the reproduction, specifically to stop this from happening. At least that's the way Sayce kind of puts it to us, is that that's the whole point, is that they don't want any more of these keepers, so they're trying to stop it. So how did Sayce slip through? And apparently he's not the only one. So that's a really good point. Really good question for the future. But I feel like it touches on sort of when we first met Sayce, and he's talking about, I think it was Dak, who was kind of had a problem with like how servile and just subservient by nature this guy seemed to be, and that he kind of said his entire species was. And it was like, oh, that kind of rubbed some people the wrong way, because it's like, yeah, we're slaves and we like it that way.
Yeah, the phrasing just made me very uncomfortable.
But now you kind of get an explanation of why that is.
Yeah,
and it should make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't make the situation any better. It just makes you understand it more.
Anyway, we're gonna move past that because I just can't. I can't even.
Yeah.
And he says, she's like, you were brave enough to save me. And he's like, oh, well, I promised Kelsier that I would see to your safety. And she has this thought where she's like, she wondered if he had a reason for his actions. After all, who would risk their lives simply to save Vin? Which, that's sad.
Yeah,
but this is where we get
some self-esteem for sure.
She needs a hug.
Yep. But then she probably wouldn't trust the hug.
No. She don't touch her. Probably it's a bad idea.
Yeah. She's like, why are we touching? What's happening?
And that's how you get a coin through the head.
Yeah. Or a knife in the back, whatever. Yeah. But this is where we find out that people think that it was Mare that betrayed Kelsier, which you guys had called. Gotta give it to you. And actually, I think there's even in the what is the word I'm thinking of? In the annotations, I think he makes a note at this point where he's like, I suspect some of you probably figured that out.
It's still phrased in a way that, like, no one knows for sure. So I'm just like, oh, is this going to be one of those things where all the evidence points that way, but the author never really answers the question and lets us fill in the blanks? Well, I have no problem with it if that's the case, but I'm just like, I feel like that's going to be one of those things that's never made explicit.
You want an answer. I understand.
Well, in a way, yes. But as I say, like, I don't mind when when an author is writing a story and, like, they set up something, like, there's enough hints so you can figure out what happened, but they never actually come out and say it. I mean, Martin has done that with A Song of Ice and Fire quite a lot. It's like, it's never really explicitly said that these two characters were having an affair, but there's enough hints out there you can sort of put it together, at least until the TV show makes it explicit.
Yeah, TV shows can't be vague, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, isn't it a lot of what Kelsier has to go off is because of what the Lord Ruler actually said to her and that he seemed so genuine? Like, it doesn't strike me as, out there if the Lord Ruler was just messing with him.
Right, and that's what we find out in the next chapter, is that really that's all he has to go by, is there's no one else really who could have done it, and the Lord Ruler actually thanks her to their faces and is kind of smug about it, apparently, from the way Kelsier describes it. And so, like, and she's dead now, so unless you can track down or someone who did betray them, or unless the Lord Ruler says otherwise, there's really no other way to get evidence at this point. But Sayce sends Vin to bed because she needs more rest, and that is how we wrap up the third chapter. And this epigraph kind of just continues from the last one, where he's like, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just stayed in my little town. Maybe I'd become a blacksmith and have my own sons. Maybe someone else would carry this terrible burden. So he's very contemplative in these things that we get, and that's kind of a repeated theme in these epigraphs, is that it's very journalish. It's very looking inward.
Yeah, he's trying to, like, see himself not from his own perspective.
Yeah, he's very thoughtful. It's interesting. And then we find out that Vin is extremely bored living this noble woman's life, not getting to do anything cool.
Well, you really only got one person to blame for that.
It's true. Well, she has herself to blame, and the guy who stabbed her. He can take some of the blame.
Well, yes, but she's the one who put herself in that situation.
Like she's annoyed because taking Renu's idea of taking lunch was for Vin to sit there and attend while he attended to his own duties. This guy, whoever he is, acting like Lord Renu he's not that friendly. It's the impression that you get here, but maybe it's just it's his method acting, right? He's in character.
It's probably totally normal for noble society as well.
Probably true. Well, and that's what Breeze even says later, or Kelsier. It's like Breeze is like, some people would love not having anything to do all day, and Vin's like, those people must be crazy, and Kelsier's like, yeah, they're mostly nobles, so obviously they're crazy.
I was going to say, like, that is totally a Breeze thing to do. Sit around on my arse all day, drink wine, and eat? Holy shit, that's the life.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and really, there's nothing else to touch on, so we'll get straight into it. These guys show up, Breeze and Kelsier and Yedden and Doxson, for a meeting, and they're like, hey, you guys don't get to come and have the crew meetings with us very often, so we thought we'd bring it to you. And Renu's like, oh, you didn't have to, and Vin's like, shut the hell up, yes, you did.
And Breeze already has a fucking wine glass.
Yeah, he walked in the door and sent somebody to get him some wine or something.
He carries one with him.
Yeah. Got some guy behind him with a bottle.
Forget a bottle, he's probably got a keg. I say, Blacksleeve, fill up my cup, please. This guy's carrying a barrel around like a backpack.
And this is where they have that exchange that I just talked about, where Vin's upset and Breeze is like, dude, a lot of people would envy. Some would find your state quite enviable, Vin, which means that he wants to sit and do nothing and get paid for it. So
it's the closest thing he can say to, can we swap?
I'll be a noble woman.
And I think the big difference in this section is how friendly Yedden has become, because he's seeing results. They're getting men, they're getting weapons, and he's just like, hey, yeah, let's do this thing. He's like, I want to go see the troops, Kelsier, please. Kelsier's like, yes, soon. It's a real big change for his character, but it happens almost completely off screen, or off page, I guess.
Well, given we're almost entirely following Vin around, except every so often when we follow Kelsier, and Vin really has no reason to be in contact with Yedden most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Their roles are very separate, so...
Yeah, it's true.
And Yedden doesn't have any missed abilities to teach her, so there's no reason for her to talk to him on that account.
Yeah, he's just he's kind of a tertiary character, I guess. Yeah, he's just that guy who was a huge jerk at the beginning and is coming around. I want to stop and hit on, I like Breeze talking about, be warned, Hammond tends to be optimistic about these things. If the army was made up of one-legged mutes, he would praise their balance and their listening skills.
Oh, I love that. That was such a good line.
Breeze just loves digging into Ham, even when he's not there. It's fine. Marsh, and they're just gonna leave it to Marsh to find out how to beat the Inquisitors. He'll figure it out. It's fine. Which, yeah, I'm sure that'll work out. And this is where they asked Sazed about the book that Vin found, and he's like, I thought it was something sort of ancient religious text, but it turns out that it is a journal penned by the Lord Ruler, or rather the man who would become the Lord Ruler.
The obvious hint is he's reading what we're reading in the epigraphs.
Yeah, they're definitely hinting at that hard, because it's a record of his travels, and he specifically mentions that he puts in a lot of details about things like Pac-Man, which, hey, we've heard of some Pac-Man.
Yeah.
So do you think that's the case? I mean, are they trying to fake us out here, or is this actually what we've been reading?
I think that is the case of what's going on. There is something more to it, but I'll get to that when we get to predictions.
We're nearly there, so okay. I'll allow it.
For sure. I can't see any reason to put this in there if it's not relevant to those epigraphs.
Mm-hmm. And they came here because they want to see if Vin is ready to go back to the parties, and she is very eager. But no more allomancy unless Sazed says it's okay, because she's still recovering. And then we get the fashion section where Vin is examining different dresses and trying to decide which one to wear, which it's like, man, this one's really low cut, but I don't have much to show off. And it's a very odd inclusion in this book to me, but it's a character moment for Vin.
But I mean, it makes sense. She's trying to look at it from like her life is all about pointing out the practicality of certain things, and and this is her approaching that while also slowly learning, you know what, I actually like this one. It's a mix of her slowly changing her mind on how things work. Like, she doesn't have to think of anything in terms of, yeah, well, this is good for this reason. This is good for this reason. This one I just like.
Okay, we're gonna make this fun because the very first sentence, I think, of the next chapter that nobody's read yet is which dress Vin picks. So as part of our predictions, everyone's got to guess which dress Vin is going to pick. So what do we have here? We've got a yellow gown that seems a little too perky. We've got a white one that is too ornate. We've got a black one with silver embroiderings that she thinks matches her hair, but is perhaps too dark. And we have a red one with a low neckline and translucent mesh in some places that seems too blatant. So those are our 4 choices. Get ready to lock in your answers when we get to that point. And really, the big part of the end of this chapter is her conversation with Kelsier when she sees him on the balcony. And he's like, does the world look wrong to you? And she's like, what do you mean wrong? This is just the way the world is. He's like, I think your mindset is part of the wrongness. The world should not look like this. And to us, it makes complete sense when he shows her a picture of a flower and is like, this is called a flower. The rumors say that they used to smell good and sometimes maybe even grew into fruit, according to some crazy claims. But Vin is just like, what are you smoking?
I really like this moment. I thought it was just a nice touch. Like, sort of reminds you of, like, what, plants aren't meant to be green. What the hell are you talking about from way back?
It's a nice character moment for the two of them, and it leads very nicely into the discussion about Mare. And I feel like a lot of stuff about this world seems kind of Earth-like. Like, there's animals that we recognize and stuff, and I think the author wants to remind us just occasionally, it's like, no, stuff is messed up here. Plants are weird and brown, and the sky is, like, filled with ash, and the sun is red. Don't forget these things.
So yeah, every all the plant life is dead. All the people are super depressed. There's creatures made out of corpses.
Mare, we find out, was a Tin-Eye and was fascinated by pre-Ascension times and collected things like this picture of a flower. Introduced Kelsier to Sazed, and he tells. They have this conversation, which she kind of had a smaller version of the same conversation with Sazed earlier, where she's like, Reen, my brother told me that everyone will betray you if given the chance. And Sazed is like, even if that was true, I wouldn't want to believe it. And that's what Kelsier says about Mare, more or less. It's like, look, if I had the choice between loving her, betrayal included, and never knowing her, I would choose love. And maybe it's dumb, but, where were you happier, Vin? And we also find out, and after this heartfelt discussion about trust and love, we get a little factoid drop about how you get allomantic powers. You don't just have them from the time you're born. You have to snap, like Kelsier did in the pits the night after her corpse was taken away. The philosophers say a man cannot command the metals until he has seen death and rejected it. So, in case their whole lives weren't bad enough, you don't even get superpowers until something really messed up happens to you.
And given how common the powers are, among the population, that means a lot of people have seen that happen.
Yeah. Well, and given how valuable the powers are, to have these awesome powers, you have to wonder, at least it makes me wonder at this point, the nobility know that they inherently may develop these powers. You think that they're willing to just wait and see if maybe it happens at some point, or do they do something to try to make it happen?
Speed up the process. And also, whose death caused it for Vin.
Yeah.
I got the sense that she snapped when her mother tried to kill her, and she was so young at the time she didn't know what happened.
Yeah, I can see that.
It was her own death that she saw and walked away from it.
Yeah, and she wants to know too. She's like, well, when did it happen to me? And he's like, I don't know. Life you lived, there were lots of opportunities. And we find out that Kelsier's like, I decided I wanted to see her dream fulfilled. I wanted to make a world where flowers returned with green plants and no soot. I know I'm crazy. And she's like, no, actually, it finally kind of makes sense. And they have this moment where he's even like, Mare wanted a child, but I wanted to be the most famous goth thief of all time and didn't have time for it. But now I kind of wish that I had one. A daughter with her dark hair and resilient stubbornness.
Hint, hint.
Can I adopt you?
Also, when we were first married a decade and a half ago, which is about how
Yeah.
old she is.
I found
I'm
myself
your
doing some math.
dad.
Well, I want to. There's something else from the. Oh, there's two things from the annotations. One I just like totally skipped over because we're running kind of long, but we'll touch on the one that goes specifically here first. Part of this, he says, is because part of the conversation that he puts in here is because his alpha readers felt like there was going to be a relationship here between Kelsier and Vin.
Like a
Or
Batgirl,
romantic.
Batman creepy thing.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, and he even says, he's like, you can probably tell she has a little bit of like a hero worship crush on Kelsier, but I wanted to make it clear that that is not the kind of relationship that we were going to have here, because not only is he a lot older than her, and that would be gross, but it's just he doesn't see her that way, and so it's a lot of the alpha readers were going past this point expecting that we're shipping these two, and so he added something here to be like, no, this is how he sees her.
Like, God damn it, shippers.
And I hope that is not too much of a spoiler, that was his intention there. Maybe it kind of is a spoiler and I just spoiled for you. Maybe you all thought there was going to be a crazy romance between the two of them, but that is not his intention here, and he wanted to make that clear with this daughter conversation.
I think he did a pretty good job before this. With that, I feel like most of their conversations have been very like, look, I need you to trust me. I want to be your friend. And then like, especially the parts where she's kind of following him, wanting to be like him. It's like, to me, it felt very father-daughter,
I agree.
not lovers.
Yep.
Okay. But the other thing that I totally skipped over when we got there was during the conversation with the whole crew, when everyone's sitting around and Say's just telling them about the journal thing, Breeze asks a question, and I'm trying to find it here, and Say's responds by, Breeze asks, how does this thing about the book help us? And Say says, I'm not certain, Master Ladrian. However, the understanding, blah, blah, blah. This is one of the only times, maybe the only time actually, that we hear Breeze's last name is Ladrian, and he's one of the only people that we've seen that seems to get a last name.
Well, I mean, like Say's in one of the previous chapters we did this episode, he calls Club's master Cladent.
Cladent, yep. But this bit, and he puts it in the annotations because it doesn't really come up ever. Like it's just kind of backstory that there's never really a good place for. But I found it really interesting, and I thought you guys might also. Ladrian is the name that Breeze went by when he was growing up. He is actually the only one in the crew who is a full-blooded nobleman. None of the others know about that.
Oh.
That he's come to the underground from the opposite direction of everyone else, from the top down. But he let it slip when he was younger what his real last name was. And somebody in the Final Empire could theoretically connect him to one Lord Ladrian, who disappeared from noble society some number of years back. But he doesn't come out with it because he doesn't want to lose credibility and maybe even anger some people like Kelsier, who just hate noblemen in general.
That's fair.
So there's a fun fact about Breeze. Say's been around long enough to at least have heard this name, which he specifies here that Breeze let it slip to a few people when he was younger, mostly on accident, that his real name is Ladrian. But I guess it's kind of interesting because we talked about where these nicknames come from, but in this case, it's not that everyone knew his name and gave Breeze a nickname. Breeze took on this name more or less to hide what he was, and he just goes by Breeze. So interesting backstory that I thought was cool about Breeze, that he is actually a nobleman who, I guess, things were going so badly for him that he's like, I'll just become part of the ska underground. Okay.
Which is interesting when you're considering his personality is the guy who likes to just sit around and chill out all the time. If he's a nobleman, he's already got that life, but here he is trying to subvert it for the rest of the nobility. It's an interesting wrinkle.
Mm-hmm. Although it might explain why he is so much like that if he was brought up as a nobleman also.
That's
for sure.
We ran long here because, well, it's 4 chapters, and like I said, there's lots of stuff in these chapters. So anyone have any final thoughts on these before we start into predictions?
Nope.
Okay. So, first off, the most important, the dress prediction. Which one is Vin going to pick?
I got my money on red, and I'm probably horrifically wrong again.
Yeah, I'd say red as well. I think she was. It certainly sounded like she was leaning more towards that one.
Okay, 2 for red.
Yeah, I'm on the red bandwagon. I'm pretty sure that's the one she laid out on her bed, it says in the chapter. So to me, that means that is the selected one.
Okay. So everyone's going for red. Interesting. We'll see next time if we're right. Joe, since you're already gone, what predictions do you have?
I predict that she's going to go to a ball. She's going to meet up with the venture guy again. Things might get a little heated, like in a sexual way, not in a like angry way, or maybe both. I'm not, I didn't
Either
write
way,
a book.
red dress is appropriate.
They need to have like the little argumentative repartee before.
Right, exactly.
Playfully.
Yeah, and Sace is gonna be like, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that," and Vin's gonna be like, "I'm a teenager. I'm gonna do what I want." Again.
You're not my real dad.
Yes, Sazed.
Kelsier is my
Anyway.
dad. Whoa.
Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah. So that's really my only prediction, is that we're gonna get to see some more interaction between her and the heir to the Venture throne.
Okay. Who else wants to go?
I'm gonna go last.
Just threw you under the bus, Jamie. Go ahead.
Yeah, great. Me bus. I don't really have anything. I had a pretty big prediction last week, so I think sort of adding to that about the Lord Ruler being able to see further into the future, and with the Steel Inquisitors just knowing what they know, I definitely think I'm willing to stick with that prediction that there's some kind of future reading power. I think it's really interesting learning a little bit about Saze, that he's not necessarily an allomancer, but he does use the metals. There are other powers regarding the metals out there that we don't know. So the Steel Inquisitors, while they've got allomantic powers, there is definitely something else out there that isn't allomancy. And again, not really a prediction, but I guess kind of a prediction. The prophecy, the Terrace prophecies, I would be really keen to read what they are, because I think we're going to see another character who fulfills that prophecy, which is why the Terraceman, I can't remember what his name was. He was so convinced that, we think is the Lord Ruler in these journal entries, that he was sort of the chosen one, and then he's turned around and gone, no, it's not this guy. We're wrong. I think there's someone else who's going to meet those qualities. I think it's a bit obvious that it would be Kelsier at this point, but I don't think it will be Kelsier.
Okay.
But I don't know who it would be. So
Quan was his name, by the way.
Quan.
So do you think that when he turned around, it was because he realized that this guy didn't actually fit, maybe he found something about him that didn't fit the prophecies, or did Quan find someone else who did fit them better, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way it would go.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to think about that one.
Zach, it's the end. You saved yourself a whole minute. What do you got?
Right. Because I've got a big one, and this is probably going to be like another total crackpot theory, but so bear with me on this one. I think Kelsier is going to wind up being one of the ultimate villains of the piece.
Ooh.
Because with all the stuff, I'm pretty sure that the epigraphs are the Lord Ruler's journals, but I think the more and more I read it, the more and more I think they're being set out there to show the Lord Ruler was once a sympathetic person who did something wrong and then eventually went up becoming, like we were talking about before, becoming the Dark Lord. And I feel like those epigraphs are there to parallel the fact that Kelsier is heading down a similar sort of path. The thing that really tipped me off to that was the whole, one of the epigraphs mentioned the friends I killed along the way. And then when he's talking to Doxson, he's talking about first Mare, then Vin, like I said before. And that sort of made me think, he's burying his friends too. Oh, hang on. And then I'm thinking about all the really dark periods where Kelsier's seemed really heartless before, like killing all the guys. And it's like, well, they're Scar who sided with the nobility. They deserve to die. And I just feel like Kelsier's on a slippery slope. Everyone's already talking about how he's sort of insane. I feel like he probably is going to upend the Lord Ruler, and then they're going to find out he's like once he gets it, that power is just going to drive him just as mad. And then Vin's going to be like, I have to take down my father figure.
Interesting. Very Star Wars. So
Yeah.
I mean, do we think that he's going to like off the Lord Ruler, and then if we actually think there's like deepness stuff inside of him, it will like move into Kelsier, or is it more of just like he'll get this power and not be able to give it up because power corrupts?
Well, I think everyone's building him up as this total hero, so I think like he's going to bring down the Lord Ruler, and people, people will go, well, you're the one who killed God, so like you're going to have to bear at least some of the responsibility of keeping everyone safe in the aftermath. And I do think the deepness has corrupted the Lord Ruler, and I think that will probably take an effect on Kelsier as well. And yeah, like I'm not entirely certain as how it's all going to go down, but I feel like that is the path he's on, and it's going to fall to Vin to try and sort it all out in such a way that it doesn't come back onto her.
Interesting. That is a very new theory for us. I like the way that you're thinking.
Yeah,
I also find
it just sort of clicked in the last couple of chapters. Like, oh, hang on, this guy's getting darker than we all thought, and I don't think it's going to go well. He's
definitely been showing some darkness in there for a while, but it really did kind of come out a little bit here. I agree with you. I find it interesting that last week Joe had a theory, not during theory section because it was so insane according to him, that Sazed was going to end up betraying the group, and now your theory involves like Kelsier becoming the bad guy and the group having to fight against him. And we've heard repeatedly from Vin this whole book, this recurring thing where Reen is like, anybody will betray you, and she's learning through working with this crew that maybe that's not true. But if either of those things happens, it's like, holy shit, Reen was right all along. Anybody will betray you.
But there's also the fact that, like, if it does wind up being Kelsier, as I think, then it's not so much the fact that he betrayed them just out of personal gain, like most people Reen was talking about. He's done the wrong thing while trying to do the right thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I got you. Okay, that's a pretty cool one.
Swinging for the park on this one.
Now that I've mentioned it, though, Joe, do you still have your theory ready that Sazed is going to turn out to be bad based on whatever else we've learned?
I'm not sure. I feel like some of the things we've learned in these last 4 chapters may have not given credence to that theory. I like Dak's theory, and I think it fits in nicely with my theory that the deepness is actually what's controlling the Lord Ruler and making him evil. And it also fits well with my theory that Vin may be like the actual chosen one to defeat the deepness and bring balance to the Force, or whatever you want to call it. So I don't know. I feel like I really like where all our theories are going. I feel like they could commingle, mesh in any number of ways. So
yeah, none of them really contradict each other.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's get into. We have a couple things that I wanted to read that we got sent. I got the Sanderlanche page got some messages from Kate, who said, "I adore you guys. Can't wait to hear more. Sanderson has been my favorite author for about 10 years, and I've always wished I could read everything for the first time again. I love hearing your theories and ideas. Please keep up all the wonderful work." And then she followed that up with, "This is my beat up but very loved copy." She sent me a picture of this beat up copy of The Final Empire. "The last time I met with him, we played Magic, and which I told you guys before, Brandon Sanderson, very into Magic the Gathering. And I told him a bit about my life and thanked him for inspiring me through some very suicidal times. This was his response, and agreeing to sign my ankle so that I could get his autograph tattooed. I can read."
Oh, wow.
And so her book is signed, and then in quotes is "I am hope," which is a statement that comes up at some point. I don't even.
I was going to say that's a quote from later in the book, isn't it?
Yeah, I almost didn't read it because it's kind of a spoiler because it's from later, but it's it's just a short sentence, so I think it's okay. But anyway, so that's what she sent us, and I replied, and she also, when she replied back to me, she's like, "You guys do a great job keeping background noise out," which will be interesting this episode with the ice cream truck. We'll see if that works out.
Well, I mean, we have to constantly deal with a cat yelling on one side of the door because she wants to go to the other side of the door. So
cats are like that. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if my cat doesn't jump up and try and knock off the microphone while I'm in the middle of recording, so it's fine. And then we received an email from Angela, who was the first person who emailed us. She sent us another email. It says, "Hello, I'm still enjoying the podcast. The theories are the highlight of the show. You're all very creative." But she has some comments based on the conversation that we had about Breeze and allomantic powers when we read him when they're trying to recruit people. She says, "I wanted to throw out a point about the soothing and rioting that Breeze orchestrates during Kel's speech. I tried to find in my book how many people are in attendance, and it didn't specify that I could find. However, the book describes the group as a large crowd. Later in the chapter, Breeze says they only get about 20 men from each meeting. If Breeze's powers were really forcing people into joining something they didn't believe in, wouldn't most, if not all of the people end up joining the rebellion? I'm not saying that Breeze's moral compass should be used by everyone, but if soothing and rioting could take someone who is completely unwilling to put their life on line and force them to die in an unwanted war, it would be much easier to recruit volunteers. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Breeze should be very careful not to recruit people who don't actually want to join. This isn't overtly stated in the text, but imagine that Breeze forces thousands of people who are not committed to the cause to join the effort. How is this supposed to form a formidable army to take Luthadel? We know that the effects of Breeze's allomancy fade over time. They need huge numbers, but the people they recruit can't just be a random group. They have to have some kind of commitment. I would like to stress again, I don't love what Breeze is doing. It feels icky and manipulative, wrapped up in an organized, flippant package to disguise morally gray ground. However, I think we may be giving him a little bit too much credit in what he can or would want to force people to do. So what do you guys think of that?
While I agree with certain points that she's making, I feel like Breeze also makes it very clear. It's like, I want them to remember a feeling that I am pushing on them later. And so I feel like he is a master of not only making people feel a certain way in the moment, but also being able to make them continue to feel that feeling later. Now, she has a point. When they leave Breeze and they go and they train in these caves, obviously it takes a great amount of willpower of their own to want to continue to be in the army when they're not around soothers. But I still think his power's pretty formidable.
Makes sense. I don't know. What do you think, Jane? You were the one who first even brought up, like, hey, this is kind of shady. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, she's got a point that they're not getting massive amounts of turnaround on their efforts. So, I mean, how many people are in the room? If you've got 100 people in there, there's 20% who are willing to join. You know, without this, would that same 20% have been willing to join, or would they have had no one? Yeah, it is an interesting point. Like, are we giving him more credit than he's due? I still think it's. I mean, if it wasn't having an effect at all, they wouldn't do it. So there is definitely something that they're getting more people than what they would have normally. And I mean, yeah, they are free to make their own choices and stuff, but they're creating feelings and, you know, sense of pride and loyalty and wanting to stand up for what they believe in, but they still wouldn't necessarily have felt that before. Yeah. So I know that they have a need to do it. I still don't agree with it, but I mean, how much do we agree with in war anyway?
Well,
so.
Yeah. But
it's she's right. He's not just sitting there forcing a whole bunch of people who don't want to be involved to do it, but it is still giving that nudge. And, you know, how do you know what they would have done without that? You don't know.
Right. And I like your point that it's like, well, even if he convinces like 5 people who wouldn't have done it otherwise to do it based on his power, he still must be having an effect, or what's the point of having him there in the first place? Like, they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't making a difference between people who wouldn't have done it otherwise and people who are now doing it because of what he did. Which it really seems like that's the bottom line to me, is like, clearly it's making a difference. People who would not have gone are now going, and maybe it's a small difference, maybe it's big. There's no way to really tell because they have him doing it.
I mean, if you were very, very strongly opposed to it, I don't think he would be able to force you to go. But if you were sitting on the fence, maybe you'd just be pushed into that direction, and that's how they're getting more people.
All right. He's going around pushing people off of fences. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
He's just shoving people off fences. That's how I broke my arm, in case anyone wants to know. I fell off a fence.
Yep. That's true. I was there.
Yeah, it's fun times. Okay, this is going to be probably our longest episode ever, which I will try to take into account when we're talking about doing a bunch of chapters in the future. It was the same amount of text, but we went pretty long. So
Thank you, Kate and Angela, for your emails.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to send us stuff, once again, thesanderlanche@gmail.com. Go to the Facebook page, leave messages, send messages, tweet us at thesanderlanche. All sorts of ways to contact us. Please do. We love having stuff to inspire more discussion. Just hearing nice things said about us. I always like hearing nice things said about me. If you can say mean things if you want. I'll cry about it later. It's fine. Just,
say mean things about
I
me.
like the.
I love that.
I like that your theories are very creative. I'm just like, that's a nice way of saying entertainingly wrong.
Well, isn't that really, when you get down to it, isn't that the point? Aren't we trying to entertain them with your wrongness?
Oh, absolutely. Why do you think I hung on to like the volcano thing for so long?
But please send us stuff. Just any interaction with our audience, we love. It's fun. It's great for us to just know that people out there are listening and enjoying. Love it. Next week, we will be back to 2 chapters. We are reading chapters 18 and 19 of The Final Empire. We haven't switched books. It's still The Final Empire, just in case you're wondering. So please come back, listen to the next
you really
one.
think someone's made that mistake?
No, I really doubt it. That's why it was a joke. Although it
just like,
would be
what?
funny
This
if
is more
someone's
of a
like,
section. This is bullshit.
I picked up the next one and went to chapter 17 and you didn't talk about it. No, but music by Miracle of Sound. I always have to remember to throw that in because they're so awesome. And I think that's it. We will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Bring up the brother in me. I'm searching for unity. Everything is changing.